You know those nights after a long day at work when making dinner just feels like a bridge too far?
As a mom of two, I don't have time to go home and rotisserie a chicken. Between baseball and soccer schedules, I don't have the time. But it's very easy for me to go to my local grocery store, pick one up, and have a good meal.
The grocery store chicken, smelling all good, promising no cooking, no dishes, just pick me up and take me home. Why is this such a good deal? Hi, I'm Paul Haberstrood. Welcome to a best of edition of The Cost of Living. Every now and then we ask you for questions, and today we're revisiting some of our favorites. Like, can an already cooked, ready-to-eat rotisserie chicken from the grocery store really cost less than a chicken you cook yourself? How does that work? And with apologies to Jerry Seinfeld, what's the deal with reverse mortgages? We also have a question about what happens when you drop stuff into one of those boxes that collect stuff for charity. Where does the money go? Up first, everything you ever really wanted to know about crown corporations. Our first question today is actually a bunch of questions.
Hi, this is Mickey Rigby from Truro, Nova Scotia. I have a recollection of life before Crown Corporations. I'm wondering if Crown Corporations are indeed effective. Who is the CEO accountable to? If it's the board of directors, who appoints the board? If there's a deficit, who is responsible for the deficit? And if there's a profit, who benefits?
So, what do we need to know about Crown Corps? Well, they're owned by governments, federal and provincial, and they're kind of private, kind of public. As for your recollection about life before Crown Corps, Mickey, well, they've been around for a while. Canadian National Railway was created in the 1920s. In the 30s, we got the Bank of Canada and, yes, the CBC. But
the golden age of state-owned enterprises was largely in the post-war period. Okay, so the 1950s and 60s and sort of early 70s. So this is the development of the welfare state, and we got pensions and healthcare and built the universities and the highways and all of those kind of things.
Malcolm Bird is a public policy professor at the University of Winnipeg. He studies Crown Corps. They can be controversial. Not everyone likes them. He's more of a supporter. When a lot of crown corporations were created, the economy was rolling, the population was booming, the country needed a lot of stuff. Telephone networks, electricity generation, financing. Now, the private sector did some of it. Other times, government stepped in. Canada now has 44 federal crown corporations. Some of them are household names. Via Rail, the Royal Canadian Mint. But there's also like the Great Lakes Pilotage Authority. Provincially, there's a bunch more. Every one of these has a different reason for being. But in general, if you look at the argument for Crown Corps, Malcolm says it's this. Private businesses don't always do everything a country might want them to do. Canada's big. Not every private company wants to be out there serving every rural community.
Canada Post is the best illustration of this. So the way it essentially works is that Canada Post is obligated to provide mail and package delivery to every address in Canada, regardless of where it is and the costs associated with it. So you can think about how important this is for people in small towns and rural communities, indigenous communities up north, et cetera, where there isn't a market incentive to provide post and parcel services to those communities.
For $1.15, you can put a stamp on a letter and mail it from Wawa to Whitehorse. Is there a business case for doing this? Not really. Malcolm says Canada Post, which is obligated to provide this service, fills a gap in the free market.
There's sort of what we would call a market failure, where the market is not able to provide sufficient services to rural and remote communities. So what Canada Post does is that it uses the revenues it earns from its urban operations in terms of mail delivery and package delivery, and then it cross-subsidizes from those revenue-earning business lines to provide services to rural and remote communities, which are not revenue positive.
Canada Post hasn't made money since 2017. So, to Mickey's question, what happens if there's a deficit? Well, Crown Corps run like private businesses, so they might borrow money to cover operating expenses. But they're also not really private, so they might get a subsidy. And if things go really bad, government picks up the tab. Now, if they make money, governments get the profits. But this is where being private and public can get tricky. Look at something like provincial liquor boards. They're cash cows for governments. But provinces don't want them selling too much booze. They don't want to encourage excessive drinking. So it's like, make some money, but not too much. Other Crown Corps live in this same in-between world, like provincially run auto insurance, which Malcolm has where he lives in Manitoba.
The standing order to the Crown, the auto insurers, is don't lose any money, okay, because they don't want to provide a subsidy, but it's don't make any money either, because if you make too much money, everybody gets mad and says, you're charging us too much for the auto insurance. So the insurers have to kind of play this very careful game of just earning enough money to cover their costs and have adequate reserves, but not to make too much money because people get upset.
To borrow from Kermit the Frog, it ain't easy being a quasi-private, quasi-public Crown corporation. A big argument against Crown Corps is that government shouldn't be in the business of business at all. They think, hey, let the market take care of it. And Crown Corps can sometimes get in the way of that. Like the CBC competing for advertising revenue with private media companies. This can be a constant tension, and no one's happy if the losses keep piling up.
I mean, one of the reasons the government privatized something like Canadian National Railways and Air Canada was because there was the threat of ongoing losses. And the problem when they're state-owned is that you can't reduce the cost structure fast enough or effective enough because of political variables. So in the case of Canadian National Railways, they couldn't cut their rural and northern rail lines without too much of a fuss, as it were, from the political sphere, from their owners, from the people who are affected.
Theoretically, Crown Corps are supposed to operate at arm's length from government. They're run by a CEO, but that CEO reports to a board of directors, and who appoints them? Government. So this can be a recipe for political interference. Crown Corps have a lot to juggle. Politics, public scrutiny, fulfilling non-market obligations while competing with private companies. So back to Mickey's big question, are they effective? Well, that's in the eye of the beholder. When Malcolm looks at Canada's system of private companies and Crown Corps, he thinks it ends up covering most of what this country needs. It's like a division of labor. He says private companies,
they resolve all of the simpler and profitable challenges we face. And then all of the more difficult, thankless, expensive, complex, long-term, and sometimes intractable problems fall in the public sector.
So Malcolm, anyway, believes Crown Corps have a role to play because they do things the private sector won't. Hope that got to it for you, Mickey. Thanks for the question. You're listening to a best-of edition of The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Our next question might make you feel a bit peckish.
Oh, hey, this is Caroline in Calgary. And for years I've been wondering why it's cheaper to buy a cooked rotisserie chicken at the grocery store than it is to buy a raw chicken, which then you have to take home and cook yourself. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
The grocery store rotisserie chicken. It's just sitting there like a beacon saying, you don't have to cook or clean up. Just buy me. And it seems to be a few dollars cheaper than a fresh chicken from the meat department, even though preparation, cooking, packaging, all that stuff costs money. This is what has Caroline from Calgary saying, what the cluck? Our producer Danielle Nerman went to see if she could crack open an answer.
Walk into the deli section of any grocery store and you smell it. Delicious, juicy chicken. Now, retailers don't like to talk about their pricing strategies, but there are a lot of theories about why rotisserie chickens are cheaper than uncooked birds. I spoke to a small grocery chain in Ontario, and they let me in on a little secret. It might look like you're paying less for a cooked cluck, but you're getting a smaller chicken. Rotisserie chickens all need to be the same size to fit on the spit and cook evenly. Any smaller and the meat will dry out. Any bigger and...
it may not reach that temperature, that safe internal endpoint temperature in the right amount of time.
That's Casey Owens from the University of Arkansas. She's a professor of poultry.
So it's going to be very important that those chickens that they're rotisserieing are very uniform in size for food safety purposes.
Even though you're getting a smaller bird, a rotisserie is still a better deal than an uncooked chicken. To prove this, we went to Costco.
Excuse me? I went to Costco.
That's Anise, my colleague here on the show. And yes, he has the Costco membership.
Yeah, so I went to Costco and I bought the rotisserie chicken, $7.99. When I got home, I removed it from the package and I weighed it in my kitchen.
And here's what we found. Buying a whole uncooked chicken at Costco will cost you 30% more per kilo than buying a deli chicken. Why? Well, that brings us to theory number 2, sales volume. Canadians love chicken. It has been the top-selling meat for more than 15 years. In 2020, Costco sold a peck of a lot of rotisserie chickens, 101 million globally. And the third and final theory as to why rotisserie chickens are such a cluckin' good deal? They're a loss leader, meaning grocers actually lose money on them. They're sold below cost as a way to get you into stores to buy more items that you may or may not need. I mean, when was the last time you went to Costco and only bought a rotisserie chicken?
When people are under time stress, they take a lot of mental shortcuts, and they often do not do price comparisons.
Andreas Booker is a food economist at the University of Guelph.
So that leaves the opportunity for the retailer that they can even design the store in a way that after you pick up the rotisserie chicken, you see other items in the store, things that are complementary to it.
So you get a deal on the deli chicken, but you end up buying side dishes that aren't such a good deal, like mashed potatoes that you could have made yourself for half the price. And you do it because it saves time.
That's the other aspect. Do you love to cook, and do you want to do it?
Casey Owens, the poultry professor, can't remember the last time she roasted a chicken at home.
You know, as a mom, and I'm a mom of 2 kids, 11 and 13. I had to remember their ages. I don't have time to go home and rotisserie a chicken. Between baseball and soccer schedules, I don't have the time. But it's very easy for me to go to my local grocery store, pick one up, spend $5 or $6, that's American dollars, and have a good meal.
And that's what she says makes the deli chicken kind of priceless. For The Cost of Living, I'm Danielle Nerman. Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Turn it off. Turn it off.
This is a question and answer edition of The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Have you seen this television commercial? A young couple are walking by a house. They stop and think about maybe buying it.
Oh, honey, it's Doris's house. She is getting up there. She's got to be ready to sell.
We wouldn't have to do a thing.
No, we'd have so much more space.
Then the homeowner, an older woman, walks up behind them.
Yeah, Doris is still pretty spry. She's not going anywhere. So get off her lawn.
It's an ad for a company that offers reverse mortgages. And that brings us to our next question.
Oh, hi. This is Kathy from Kitchener, Ontario. I was just wondering how reverse mortgages work. What are the pros and the cons of these things? And what are catches? Are there any catches? Thanks. Bye-bye.
To help answer that, our producer Jennifer Keane is here. So Jen, that ad comes up a lot on CBC News Network.
You've noticed, hey? Yeah, it's in pretty heavy rotation.
Hey, they do great work over there. I'm a company man. But let's get into Kathy's question and start by explaining, what is a reverse mortgage?
Okay, a reverse mortgage is, like they say in the ads, it's a loan that allows people to borrow money based on the equity that they have in their home. Reverse mortgages are offered by a couple of specialized lenders in Canada. In order to get one, you have to be 55 or older. You can't have any money owing on your home, and it has to be your principal residence. So it can't be a cottage or a second home. And you can borrow up to 55% of the value of your home.
All right, so what's the real draw here of something like a reverse mortgage?
Well, you can get a big chunk of cash up front, and you don't have to make payments on the loan right away. Leslie Ann Scorgie is a financial expert and author. She lives in Toronto, and she says this is really the big difference between a reverse mortgage and a more traditional kind of home equity loan.
Here's the key. If you do choose the option of a mortgage, a second mortgage, or even a home equity line of credit, you are going to need to ensure that you have some income coming in the door. So payments are required. A reverse mortgage is a little different. Payments are typically not required, and that's a huge perk.
But just to be clear here, Jen, you do have to pay this back at some point.
Oh, yeah, you will. You have to pay it back either when you sell the house or you pass away.
That's a little dark.
Well, I mean, these are geared towards older adults. They know the drill. You know, you are giving up some of the future value of your home, maybe taking away some of your kids' inheritance in order to have cash right now. And that might be appealing to someone whose home is worth a lot of money, but maybe they don't have a lot of income.
Most of the time, reverse mortgages are accessed by individuals who are in retirement who are kind of running out of cash. So they may have been the individuals who focused almost exclusively on paying off their home rather than building up their nest egg.
So if you're someone who has a lot of money tied up in your house, but you don't have a lot of income, then a reverse mortgage can help to free up some of that money. So back to Kathy's question, that does seem like a check in the pro column. What about the cons? What are the drawbacks here?
There are a few drawbacks. First of all, there are some costs associated with getting a reverse mortgage. For example, you'll have to pay to get your home appraised. But the big catch is higher interest rates. A reverse mortgage could be 2 or 3 or 4 percentage points higher than a typical line of credit. And I'll give you an example that comes from one of the providers of these reverse mortgages, Home Equity Bank. According to a chart that they provide, say you take out a reverse mortgage of about $200,000. At an interest rate of just under 5% over 10 years, you will owe about $130,000 in interest.
Huh. So that is more than half of the amount of the principal. I mean, that is a big chunk of change that you're paying off just in interest here.
And again, that money, the principal and the interest, will come due when you sell the house. And when that happens, you will likely have a deadline to pay it back. So if you pass away, for example, your estate may have to be settled quickly in order to pay it off.
So regardless of what the market is doing at that time and wherever you are, I mean, you have to sell that house.
Yeah.
So you've got that. Anything else?
There are some other big picture risks you should probably think about, like house prices sometimes go down over the years.
Do they?
Not very often, but it does happen.
Not lately, but yeah, okay, it happens.
And by taking out one, you will diminish your overall net worth, which could impact any other borrowing you might do. And because of the higher interest rates, Leslie Ann says you might want to consider other options first.
You may be in a position where you should consider actually downsizing to a smaller home. So a traditional sale and carving out your equity in that way. Or you could sell and then move to a rental so you don't have to purchase again. The cost of rent can often be much lower than the cost of all the interest that you're going to pay on the reverse mortgage.
So if you're someone who wants to stay in your home, you don't want to downsize, and maybe, reverse mortgage, something you want to consider. At least this is exactly who these ads seem to be targeting.
Yeah, that's right. People who have a lot of home equity, and think of all the people who bought their houses 40, even 50 years ago. They might have a lot of money sitting in their house. Maybe they're tempted to tap into that. But a final note of caution from Leslie Ann Scorgie. She says if you are looking at a reverse mortgage, you really should crunch the numbers. Look at that interest rate. Get someone to help you.
Well, yeah. I mean, looking at, 3 or 4 points higher than what you'd pay in a line of credit, say, yeah, crunch, Jen. Crunch away.
Always a good idea.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
This is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. And our final question today.
Hi there. It's Gordon Wheel from Sherwood Park, Alberta. For a while, I've wondered about the economics behind all those clothing donation bins I see in parking lots. How is it that my donated clothing is actually benefiting the charity identified on the bin? Where does the money actually come from? Thank you.
Anise Adari took this on for Gordon. So, Anise, you do see a lot of these bins around.
Yeah, you'll find them in places like this. I visited the parking lot of a local strip mall here in Calgary. There's a Rona, there's Canadian Tire. Outside of them, there are a bunch of donation bins, including one for Cerebral Palsy Alberta. I met up with Cindy Turnquist there. She's the charity's Director of Development and Communications.
This is one of our main resources of a social enterprise. And basically, we generate 40% of our agency's income from donations from individuals throughout the community.
Can you give me a ballpark on how much money we're talking about?
I would say roughly $1.2 million annually.
$1.2 million from just the stuff that people are dropping in these bins.
Yeah, and that's just one charity in one province, and that's after expenses.
All right, so how exactly are they making this money?
So people drop off donations in the bins. The charity staff picks it up.
We then take it to our warehouse. We sort them into clothing and miscellaneous items. And then all of it is transported to Value Village, and they pay us X amount for pounds of clothing and X amount pounds of just small household items.
She's talking about getting paid by the pound?
Yeah, the Vivi Boutique takes whatever they've been donated, and it doesn't matter whether it's designer handbags or it's a free t-shirt from a Stampede breakfast.
So how much stuff are we talking about here?
For Cerebral Palsy Alberta, in 2021, they picked up more than 3 million pounds worth of stuff. Now, a lot of it, mostly clothing, is dropped off in these bins every year. Value Village has this same deal with dozens of charities across Canada. From 2017 to 2021, the company says it paid those charities nearly $390 million.
So Value Village is paying hundreds of millions of dollars for this stuff, and presumably it's trying to make a profit.
Right. The Vivi Boutique is not a charity. It does sort through all of these donated goods, it prices what it can sell, and then it tries to make a profit off them.
Is Value Village the only thrift store that's doing this?
There are a lot of thrift stores that will take these kind of donations. In Canada, Value Village is a heavy hitter. A lot of other charity shops, though, like Goodwill in Alberta, do everything themselves. They collect the donations and they resell them.
So why aren't all charities doing that then?
I talked with Sean Shannon about this. He's the CEO of the National Diabetes Trust in Canada. Now, they've got bins for Diabetes Canada from coast to coast to coast. He says it's easier to leave the work of sorting to another company.
within each garbage bag are a treasure trove of, valuable secondhand items and perhaps a little less valuable, but it would be incredibly inefficient in the system, and therefore it would generate less money, which is the end result, to get some sort of a sorting aspect done at our end. So we really just gather them up, and really the only practical way to do that transaction with our partner is to be paid by the pound.
Essentially, these charities don't want to spend the time or the money on separating the Hugo Boss from the Hogo Booze.
Fair. Although I do have a Hogo Booze vest that is just straight fire, Anise.
Uh-huh.
All right, but so here's what you're saying happens then. They contract all this sorting of the wheat from the chaff to places like Value Village, and then the charities, they get millions of dollars.
Yeah, and for charities like Diabetes Canada, that money is critical.
It's the revenue chain or the lifeline of charities. In the end, you need to have a partner who is willing to pay for these items. And in their particular case, yes, they're not a charity, but their entire supply is sourced through a charity. And so if not for organizations like this, there really would be no simple, efficient money-making way for charities to utilize the secondhand clothing business as a way of generating much needed funding.
So to answer Gordon's question, when you donate to a charity bin in that grocery store parking lot, your stuff gets weighed. It's sold to a company like Value Village. It pays the charity by the pound for all this stuff and then resells it for whatever it thinks it can get.
And then so bottom line, you drop your used stuff into those donation bins at a strip mall, a parking lot, wherever, and you're doing that charity a solid.
Yeah, so if you have a really heavy coat you don't want anymore, head to whatever parking lot has your favorite charity's donation bin and drop it off there.
Thanks, Anise.
You're welcome.
We want to send a big thanks to everyone who asked a question. And if you have a question about business or the economy, please let us know. Our number is 1-866-550-COST. That's 1-866-550-2678. Or send us an email, costofliving@cbc.ca. The show is based in Calgary. The Cost of Living was produced this week by Danielle Nerman, Anise Hadari, and Jennifer Keane, with help from Jeff Kynock. I'm Paul Habersrud. Thanks for listening.